back to Arizona for a while and then came back. And then Nanette kind of, after Cynthia moved, kind of took up that about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And then Lisa Panzica, who I've had the privilege of knowing since like 98, 99?
At least.
Whenever we used to be at Unity at Lake Forest. And so we've all known each other and been friends for many years. She also runs the Intender Circle here at Unity Testimony on Tuesday nights?
Monday nights.
Monday nights. So anyway, I'm going to turn this all over real quickly. If you guys are recording this, so if we could minimize the background noise, would be greatly appreciated. So Cynthia, you want to turn this over? Go ahead.
Well, hello everyone. My name again, like Daniel said, is Lisa, Elisabetta Panzica. And I'm here to tell everyone a very special story. About 4 years ago, I had become very, very ill. I was in a lot of pain, and I had no idea what was going on with me. And I went to the doctor, and I found out that I had this growth on my liver, and it was called an adenoma. And the doctors had told me there was nothing I could do about it. And the worst thing that could happen if I didn't watch myself, if I didn't take care of this, was that adenoma could bleed into the other organs. And so I went home that night, and I called my friend Cynthia here, and I could barely speak. And I called her, and I told her, look, Cynthia, I'm in a lot of pain. Can you please help me? And Cynthia sent one of her friends over to my house, Nanette. And Nanette here came to my house, and she did a pranic healing on me for, I don't know, about an hour and a half or so. For about an hour and a half, and I started getting better. And then a couple of hours later, Cynthia shows up, and she works on me for about probably a couple hours as well. And by then, I'm able to speak, I'm able to move around, and that night, for 3 nights in a row, I saw this figure at the foot of my bed, and it was made of light, and it was like the Buddha, and the Buddha was sitting cross-legged, and whether I closed my eyes or opened my eyes, this entity was always there. And within 3 days, I was completely healed. I never went back to the doctor for a recheck because I was completely healed, right? And I never went back to get a second MRI because I thought there was no need for it. I was healed. And so going back, I'll give it to Cynthia so she can explain her portion or her part of it before I move on to the future part of it.
Well, when she called me, she could barely talk, and she was you could tell she was in great pain. She said her liver was really swollen, and the doctor had told her that she was not to walk, she was not to drive, she was not to work. And he said, the only walking you can do is to the restroom, basically. And so when I got to her, right after Nanette had worked on her, because I had called Nanette, I said, can you get there? It's going to take me a little bit to get there. And Nanette worked on her. Her speaking voice was much better. And so I worked on her for about 2.5 hours and doing pranic healing. And I also worked with her with EFT, working on the psychological aspects of what was going on in her life. And I talked to her a few days later, and she informed me that she went to work the next day.
That's completely healed.
I know. And she goes, the only thing I have going on is I have a little bit something going on in my back, and I'm going, it's your right kidney, because I could feel it in mine. And she said, yeah, and I just did some distant healing, and she was fine with that
too. And so, fast forward 4 years in the future, which was last December 2012. I had this thing right here that was growing, and the doctor said it was a lipoma, and I work at a surgery center, so I asked him, can you see it? whenever you're free. And the doctor agreed to see. He said, just drop by my office whenever you can. I'm available. And I said, sure. And I went to his office, and he looked at the bump, and he says, well, it's a little bit large, and it's too deep, and it might be, it might be ingrained into the brain or something, and he didn't want to take any chances. So he said, why don't we do an MRI? And he says, well, have you ever had an MRI done? And I said, yeah, about 4 years ago. And he says, well, what for? I said, for my liver, because I had an issue with my liver. And he says, well, can you get those results? And I said, well, he asked, what were those results? And I said, I don't know. And he says, well, how don't you know? I said, well, I never went back. And he says, well, why not? I said, because my friend healed me. And he's looking at me like I'm completely crazy, right? And he says, well, did you ever go back for a follow-up with the other doctor if you didn't get the MRI? And what did he say? I said, I never went back to him either. And I said, you know what, sir? I don't believe in doctors, and I don't believe in your medicine. I believe in miracles. And by now, he's looking at me, and he's thinking, he's probably thinking of what number to call for an insane asylum or something, right? And so he says, well, look, I need to see the MRI, and I need those results, so I'm going to call the place where you went, and I'm going to get those results. And so that is exactly what he did. And so I'm at work, I'm checking in a patient, I do the front desk, I work at Laguna Hill Surgery Center, so I'm checking in a patient, and then he calls me. He says, Lisa, come here. I said, no, I'm checking in a patient, let me finish. He says, no, I have something really important to tell you. I'm like, well, it can wait, I'm checking in this person. And so I finish checking in the patient, and then I go into his office, and his face is pale white. I'm like, well, what's wrong? He says, I have your results. I'm like, so what? It's been 4 years, right? And he says, do you know that that growth bled into every one of your organs, and your abdomen was full of blood, and you should have been dead? I should have been dead. And I'm like, well, here I am. And he's like looking at me like, what's wrong with this woman, right? And I told him, well, see, this really works. This healing really works. And he says, well, whatever you did, and he used other words, whatever the blank you did, it worked. He said it worked. And we have medical proof that this worked. And then I called Cynthia, and I told Cynthia, do you know what you did? And she says, no. Remember 4 years ago when I had this growth in my liver, and you and Nanette came over to my house? You healed me. I would not be here today if it wasn't for these two ladies. I would not have lived to see my little grandbaby. Thank you. Thank you.
And when I got that message, I got off the phone and I was just sobbing.
I was so grateful for these two ladies here. And because of pranic healing, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't because of the pranic healing these two ladies did for me that day.
But you're not finished with the story?
What part did I forget?
Well, the doctor wanted to get another
Oh,
MRI.
Okay, the doctor wanted to get another MRI. I need cue cards here. The doctor wanted to get an MRI, so I went to the hospital. Well, at first I told him, look, I can't afford it. It's like $2,000, $3,000 to get an MRI. And he says, well, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. I'll talk to them, and I'll have them accept your insurance as payment in full. And I said, well, why do I need to? There's nothing wrong with me. I'm healed. And he says, the real miracle would be is if your results come back 100% normal, then we'll really know the liver was healed, right? And I said, well, we know it's healed. And so anyways, I said, okay, I'm going to go through with this. I'm going to go to the hospital. I'm going to do this thing to prove to you that this really works. So I went to the hospital. I did the MRI. And the results came 100% normal. And there's nothing wrong, the liver is completely healed. And that's our story.
And you're actually gonna get the hard copies.
Now I'm gonna get the hard copies
And
of the
MRI.
pictures, MRI pictures. This is the lab, the results, the wordings, but we want the actual pictures.
You should report it to the media.
They'll disregard it.
Not necessarily.
Those for
Report it to the media, and who knows where the divine will take it from there.
Thank you, everybody. Thought we'd want to hear that story.
Yes, we did.